Hello, and welcome back to the Nourisher Podcast. I just want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you to everybody who tunes into every single episode, to those of you who have sent words of love and encouragement, and to those who've sponsored or supported the podcast by sharing episodes with their friends, or if you've purchased merch. I'm just so overwhelmed with joy and appreciation. And I'm so glad that these episodes are resonating with women in our community and that they are starting conversations that allow us to be vulnerable with each other. I do have to put in a shameless plug here and remind everyone that we recently launched the first round of the Nourisher Podcast merch. I am having entirely too much fun designing all of these things that are probably going to be new staples in my wardrobe. I don't know about you guys, but I have at least 50 sweatshirts and it is never enough. And so obviously the sweatshirt is my favorite. It's also my fiance's favorite, even though it has a flower on it. So you should definitely check those out. You can see everything available on Instagram and Facebook at the Nourisher Pod. And stay tuned because I already have a slew of ideas for round 2. Now, I want to get into the meat and potatoes of today's episode because I'm super excited to have our guest today. As many of you know, unfortunately, we are in the most disconnected, divisive time in history. We're either divided by screens or divided by beliefs. And we've bought into this idea that if we don't agree 100% with someone on every single thing, we can't be connected at all. We've forgotten the very thing that we are hardwired for, which is to genuinely connect with others. So how do we restore that type of connection that we're all craving? Amy Weinland Daughters, award-winning author and keynote speaker, believes in a world where what makes us different is the very thing that connects us instead of separates us. She brings that world to life by helping people reconnect to each other through the power of handwritten letters. She brings her wit, humor, and having written 580 written letters to every single one of her Facebook friends to show you how you can find deep connections in some of the most unexpected places. Amy has been featured on several podcasts and media outlets, and she even appeared on The Kelly Clarkson Show. So, Amy, thank you so much for joining us on the Nourisher Podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Okay, I just have to say, I feel like I have carpal tunnel just thinking about 580 written letters, and I don't know how you even begin to convince yourself to write more than, 2.
Right. And that's a great way to look at it because I look back on the story and I like to tell the story by starting to say I was just minding my own business. And during the entire time the letter thing went down, all through it, and now looking back on it, I still think it's completely insane. I mean, total craziness.
Yeah, I can't imagine how long that took you, but we'll definitely dive into that. But I know you're not based in the Panhandle right now, but I did take a look at your website and I think we have another Red Raider on the podcast. Am I correct?
Oh, you are correct. I tell you, I'm a proud Red Raider. I'm a season ticket holder. I'm a bearer of the torch, all things Texas Tech.
That's amazing. Yeah. What was your degree in?
My degree was in business management. So I took a serious left turn from that with the writing, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, but I turned out to be, a freelance writer and an author and now a speaker.
I think really we know college doesn't put you on the track that you're going to be for the rest of your life. So tell us, I want to know a little bit about you, where you're living now, kind of what you've got going on, and then we'll dive into this important topic of becoming connected.
Right. Well, I live in Tomball, Texas, which is far northwest Houston. I grew up in the Houston area. My husband graduated from Canyon High School, grew up in the Panhandle, went to West Texas State, graduated the same year I graduated from Tech. We figured we were probably in the same circles of people a couple times, but we didn't meet, but we met at a summer camp here in Texas. And so I got the business degree. I spent about 15 years in purchasing. And then my husband's job said, would you like to move to the UK for 3 years? We had one little kid. We were like, yeah, that's an adventure. We're in our 30s and y'all are going to pay for all that. So we we go over there, and then I realized I wasn't going to be working. It was supposed to be 2 years, and then it turned into three. But I didn't realize that that was going to impact me. And I was like, wait, I don't have a work visa. What am I going to do? So I went to the University of Birmingham and took history classes, just kind of, as a sidebar to do something. And I'd always written on the side. I was always the person at work who would write an email and think about how hilarious I was or how profound my picnic email was or whatever. And I'd written short stories of tech. I'd always written it. And so almost out of desperation, I started freelance writing. I realized I could create a little niche for myself. And the first really thing I landed was I was a national college football columnist for the Bleacher Report for a long time. That led to me getting confident enough to write the first book. And then I kept freelance writing. That the story of the second book, which is the letter writing story, just happened to me. Really, there was no intentionality in it. I went on this incredible journey. I didn't intend to write a book about it, write a speech about it. Now, frankly, I can't shut up about it because it's so powerful.
You know what? When we have a powerful message, whether we realize it or not, I think we should be shouting that from the rooftop. So there is no shame in that game.
Right, right. I like the way you said that.
So I want to get into your first book. Can you tell us a little bit about that first book and kind of what pushed you and gave you the courage to write it and publish it?
Right. Well, like I said, I had an editor of the Bleacher Report who picked me to be like one of the head national columnists, and he got me on the phone. He was like, "Look, you're really good at this." And I think part of this is being a woman, part of this is just being a human being. But I kind of thought, since my training was not in writing, my training was in business, I kind of thought I was out of my league. I didn't have the skill set. Like I really didn't take myself super seriously, even though they were paying me to do it. But I kind of felt like the girl in the Zoom meeting who didn't belong. And I guess that's the imposter syndrome. I think we all have a little bit of that. And when he told me that, I was like, wait a second, maybe I could make a go at this. So I had this book idea forever. And finally I sat down and wrote the book, and it took me forever to get it published. I never thought it'd be published. It was like the dream scenario. But the book is a fiction book, sort of. Basically, what I do is I write myself back in time to my childhood, and I show up in 1978 as like a 45-year-old person who my nuclear family thinks I'm a cousin from Ohio. And I show up at my doorstep on Thanksgiving in 1978, and my time travel guide drops me off and says, "You've got to spend 36 hours with these people." So I roll in. Now I'm wearing polyester, things from the Sears catalog, and there's my mom and dad, who are the same age as me in the story. My brother and sister are 12 and 8, and my 10-year-old self with a bowl cut, hyperactive all over the place, is there. So what I intended to do was to write this hilarious back in time, nostalgia filled, like fun journey back in time. But what happened is, and I think this is super relatable, if you return to your childhood, no matter what age you are now, when you're 8 or 10 years old and have to see that as an adult, oh my gosh, feelings.com. And so what happened was I wrote a catharsis, and I didn't mean to. So the book is highly meaningful and I think super relatable, on top of the fact that it's funny and nostalgic.
Sounds like a fun first idea. And then I love how it just kind of grew into almost this therapeutic outlet for you. That's been kind of a theme on the podcast, is people chasing their passions and doing something that means a lot to them just because they're doing something they enjoy, or they have that small voice inside their head that goes, go after that, and they're doing it unapologetically.
Right. And that's exactly what it was, because I second guess myself over and over and over again. And I kept saying, this is, the idea isn't that great. I mean, who's going to read that? Who's going to do that? But again, like you said, I just went with my gut. And people ask me questions still. Oh, did your therapist recommend you do this? I was like, no, I was just trying to be funny, haha girl, and then even the way, like, how did you pick 1978? I just went with it. That was always the idea. I just trusted myself. And the book did well enough to get published. And I think, it did fine. It did great for a first book. And there's more stuff happening with that. But yeah, I think that's such a powerful message. And I think in my letter writing story, that's even more apparent. Just what you're talking about, just trusting your gut, that little small voice inside you, and just jumping off the ledge.
Well, yeah. And then I want to jump into that book because it's kind of what sparked this whole topic of reconnecting with people and how it can bring us together in the most unexpected ways, right? So, Dear Dana is your second book.
Yeah, that book, again, I was minding my own business. I was doing my thing. I had gone to the same summer camp where I met my husband about 4 years before I met my husband. And I met this girl named Dana. And I spent maybe 6 weeks with her. And I don't really remember what happened, but we were both loud and had big personalities. She went to LSU, I went to Tech. But we connected enough to where her name kind of bounced around in my head. We had zero connection for 30 years. We weren't Facebook friends. We didn't write letters, emails. There was no communication at all. And so one day I'm on Facebook and her name goes in my head and I think it's so relatable. I type her name in and voila, there she is. Only her hair's different because it was like permed in the 80s and now it's straight and red. So anyway, I friend request her because it doesn't mean anything. Like what can happen? Social media. So she accepts my request. I don't even know if she remembers who I am, but who really cares? I had heard she had a bunch of kids and lived in Louisiana. So that was true. She had 5 kids, 4 girls and 1 boy. And the youngest was the boy. His name is Parker. And right away, I found out that Parker had cancer. I knew it was serious because they were at St. Jude in Memphis. So I was like, oh no. And right away, I kind of felt like I was overfeeling it. But, as a mom, as a person, as a human being, that worst case scenario is hard not to connect to. But right away, she's super transparent, tells everybody everything that's going on. And she asks for people to pray. And that's kind of my deal in the background. That works good for me. So I start praying. And so if you're going to pray about people, you're going to follow along with the story. And usually when I pray for somebody, like at some point you don't forget to pray, but it subsides. This never subsided, and everybody can frame that however they want to. I think it was God. So I pray in the background for these people. I don't hit like, I don't even comment because that seems insincere at this point. 'Cause
Mm-hmm.
it's like she doesn't even know who I am. And so he goes into remission. They go back home to Louisiana. At the end of that same year, he relapses. So I go to my desk on a Monday morning and I'm thinking about them. I've been praying for them. Again, I feel devastated for her because it doesn't sound good. And it's like a bolt of lightning hit me in the head. And I was like, you know what I'll start doing? I'll start sending them handwritten cards and I'll mail them to the Ronald McDonald House in Memphis. And I like to tell this story through the lens of me being nutso, like at different stages. So this is like DEFCON 1 of me being crazy. I'm like, I'll send these people who are going through this unthinkable situation letters, even though they don't really know who I am. And I hadn't written anyone a handwritten letter for like 30 years. So it's not like I came into this thing as the letter lady. That was not my deal. And so I start sending the letters though, and I'm so committed in a way that makes no sense. Every week for about 10 weeks, I send Dana and Parker a supportive note, handwritten, not trying to go on some handwritten, binge or anything. So after about 10, 12 weeks of that, you can tell her posts start to shift. And then Parker passes away at 15 years old. And so I know it has nothing to do with me, but I just felt like I needed to do more. And it was like a mini lightning bolt. I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to keep writing her. Only now I go to the next level of crazy because I don't have her home address and you're not going to message somebody for that. And so I go kind of stalk them and I see that her husband has a law office in Lafayette, Louisiana. So I just start sending the letters there because why not? Because I'm a crazy Red Raider. So I keep writing her. And every time I write her, I'm thinking, you're crazy, quit doing this, but I can't stop myself. So I write her for probably 4 months. And I lived in Ohio at the time. And so it was my birthday in April of that next year. And I go out to the mailbox, kind of hoping somebody sent me a card, but that doesn't happen anymore. So I pull the mail out. Lo and behold, a 10-page handwritten letter from Dana.
Wow.
And it was one of the greatest moments of my life. And so I pull it out. I mean, like it's the most valuable thing anybody's ever given me. And this kicks off 2 years of her and I communicating exclusively through the U.S. mail. 2 full years. We don't text, we don't message, we don't even have each other's number for most of those 24 months. And it created this incredible free space where I didn't know when or if she was reading my letters. She had no idea when I was reading her stuff. So there was this vacuum between us where we could say whatever we wanted to say and we trusted each other. It was this intimate relationship. And we used to say stuff like, I've never told anybody this before, but I know I can trust you. Like, who even does that? That's
Right.
ridiculous. But it was profound. And the best part was that I had no idea how she voted. I had no idea I knew she believed in God because she asked for prayers, but I didn't know, was she Catholic? Was she Methodist? Was she Episcopal? I didn't care. I didn't care at all. All I knew is I cared about this girl because I had been connected to her and she lost her son and we had opened up to each other in this very deliberate way. So after about 8 months of sitting back, and I sat back and I was like, wow, if this can change my perspective on almost everything, because I realized by looking at her profile, I had no idea what the real deal was. And that sounds so simple, but it was profoundly moving to find out about her real life. I was like, what happens? Like, this is the one girl on the list. So, what would happen if I wrote everybody a letter? Ding, DEFCON 5. I mean, whatever the highest DEFCON is. This is when it went all world nutso. So I put everyone's name in an Excel spreadsheet. I printed them out. I shoved them in a box. I bought stationery. I got a journal. And I don't think I ever thought I was really going to finish because that's stupid. I didn't think I was going to make it past 25 letters. I'm just a regular skinny girl trying to stay married. That's all my game is. I wasn't twirling in a field asking God what I should do. I was just minding my own business. But once I started writing these letters, I was like, wait a second. This might be the most important thing I ever do in my life. So it took me 18 months, but in 18 months, I wrote almost 600 letters, and it just blew up my life to the point that I wrote a book about it, that I speak about it, that I can't shut up about it.
Okay, I love the story of you and Dana's connection. My first question was going to be, how long between the time you met her and the time that you wrote her the letter was it before, you connected again? And 30 years, so much happens in 30 years.
Oh,
And
yeah, strangers.
exactly. And I think what I really do love about Facebook, there's so much to not love about social media, but what I do love about Facebook is it allows us to go back and find these people that pop in our heads randomly. I'll think of someone that I went to second or third grade with, and I'm like, I wonder what they're up to. And then I look it up and there they are. And it's kind of nice because you feel a connection to those people. Like you said, when they are vulnerable and they're putting their family's struggles out there, it's so easy for us to type and say, sending prayers, or, you're in my thoughts and prayers. And then we completely forget about it. Or
Right.
we pray for them one time, or we take them to the prayer list at church, and then that's the end of it. And so I love that you took it one step further, because I know how I feel when I get a handwritten or hand addressed envelope in the mail, and it makes me feel like someone thought of me. Someone thought of me. Someone thinks I'm special enough to take the time to write it out by themselves. And so I can't imagine, with what Dana was going through, how that touched her in a totally different way.
Right. And I had zero idea like what the letters were going to mean to her, because the whole time with her I kept thinking, at best, I'm a distraction because what she suffered, like, what good could this do? But I didn't realize that, one, the deliberate act of the letter, like you said, it made her feel special, made her seen and valued. But the other thing, the fact that I never stopped, but I think that was all God, 100%. But one thing I learned from her was, at some point when you're in a grieving situation, like, people back off. Like, the casseroles stop coming. Like, it's time to go back to regular life. But the fact that those letters kept showing up week after week after week, she told her girls, she's like, her girls were like, when do you think she's going to stop writing you? And she's like, I hope never. And I think that was God prodding me to do it weekly, because the fact that I didn't go away after a year, after 2 years, we still write each other. That consistency, especially when time passed, was super, super important to her. And I couldn't have known that because she didn't tell me that she didn't tell me what the letters meant. She did at the end of some letters. She'd be like, you have no idea what you've done for us. But I still didn't get it, because all I thought was, you're being weird. And they lost their son.
And she didn't write back in those 4 months. That would have given me anxiety and thought, they don't like me. They think I'm crazy, and I'll stop now.
Totally. And I think, and one of the most compelling parts of the story that is not discussed is that, what happens if Dana doesn't write me back? At some point, I would have stopped. So Dana writing me back in the midst of her absolute devastation, who does that? But without Dana writing me back, the 600 letters don't get written. The book doesn't get written. The whole entire thing never happens if she doesn't write me back.
That is so true. I love when I can clearly see, the chain of events that make these enormous things in our lives happen. And so that's such a good point. Did you know every single one of your Facebook friends personally? Like, had you met them all in person at one point in time?
No, most of them. But there was a couple that was, you know how you have Facebook friends that are a friend of a friend? One of the great things was, because really, in order to write the letters, and this is again not because I'm some great person, but I had to go into each profile so I could figure out something to write. And there was so many things that I had assumed wrong about people, not because I'm a bad person, but I never took the time to look at each of these people individually. And that turned out to be one of the most meaningful parts of the process. Because I was like, number one, these people are rock stars. Number two, these people are living real, messy, beautiful lives, just like me. And number three, I'm connected to 99% of them in a very real way, whether it was for 10 minutes or 10 years, but the people, there was only a couple people who I was like, like, I have no idea where you're from. Like, what is happening? And I had one guy from high school who we were all mutual friends. And once I messaged everybody, they're like, we have no idea who this person is. We all accepted him because they were accepted by the other people. So that was one of probably two people who I didn't write a letter to, because I wrote rules for myself, and I was like, if you absolutely don't know the person, then that's weird.
I like that you gave yourself a boundary, because also there's those people who create a Facebook account and then somehow they don't have a profile picture. They
Mm.
have no about information. They don't ever post, or they just post memes or something. I don't think I would have one clue on how to approach those people unless it was just hey, was thinking of you. Hope you're having a
Right.
great day.
My big rule was if I didn't have any mutual friends, that was the red flag. But if I looked and I knew that person, knew the person, then I was like, oh, this is the person. Okay, I got it. Then I'd write them a letter, even though I was in the midst of the Dana, because those two letter writing campaigns intersected. I had no idea what the letters were going to mean to people, and that's why it's so powerful. That's why I speak about it, because we each have this little tool that's so super easy. It's almost too simple. It's so powerful, and I can speak to that so well because I experienced it over and over and over again, what it means to people. And it can be used in any arena where there's two humans trying to relate or trying to advance a relationship, whether it's old friends reconnecting, whether it's people you do life with all the time, whether it's work people, clients, whether it's in-laws, whatever. You can frame it anywhere where there's two humans that need to connect. And it does seem, you did a beautiful job of talking about the great divide we all stand on each side of right now. And over again, I wrote to people who I knew didn't believe what I believed, who I knew didn't vote like I vote. But something about reaching out to someone deliberately and saying something deliberately for them, and it was even better when they would respond in kind with nothing but goodwill on the line. There was nothing else to be had, because a lot of people were like, I'll give you my address, but what do you want? And they were blown away by the idea that I didn't want anything. I just wanted to write them a letter. And once that happened, like, all those differences were still there. And what we believe certainly matters 100%. It just didn't seem to matter as much. The connection was what mattered. And I've seen people since then who I wrote, who I know don't believe the same things religiously, didn't vote the way I voted. I would give them the biggest hug and they would hug me back, because the connection is more important, even though we know we still don't agree with each other.
I think that's where I get so bogged down in just today's world that I am such a people person. At the end of the day, I focus on who you are as a human and who you are to me as a friend and someone involved in my life. And so you approaching them just from a kind, no agenda type of way, it automatically broke down those barriers and took them off the defense.
It did, and it gave me the gift of seeing each of these people as human beings. Because my little formula for the letters, which again I just came up with as it ends to a me, it's not like I was, plotting it out. I plotted none of it out, which was great, which made it. I think it made it work the way it did. But the first thing I had to go look and see, say you and I went to high school together, and I go and look at what you're doing now, and I'm like, oh my God, she has this podcast, and oh my God, she's doing these incredible things, and she's engaged. So one, I get to say, oh my God, you're a rock star. I'm so proud of you. Way to go. And then I get to say, hey, congratulations, you're engaged, you're getting married. That's incredible. Praying for your marriage, or I'm thinking about you. And let's say you had a struggle, you had a parent who was ill. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And a lot of these things I did not know about the person, not because I didn't care about them, because I never sat down and looked at all 600 of them individually. And so then my grateful meter, went off the charts, because I realized I was connected to you, for a reason, and you had a real life. But really the best part, and where your grateful meter really went off, is there was still a second page to fill. Not because I'm a great person again. What am I going to say on the second page? But the natural human thing to do is like, where did they fit into my life? And so where did Kayla fit into my life? Oh my gosh, in high school, when Larry broke up with me, we were standing by the payphone, and she got in my face and she was like, you know what? This is not going to define your life. God's got amazing relationships. You haven't even seen what your kids are going to look like. You're going to have this amazing life, and you're going to move on from this and realize you did better and better and better till you got to where God wants you to go. I'm like, oh my gosh, you were doing the whole women empowerment thing. You were doing the whole coaching thing before you actually did it. And so I get to thank you for what you did all those years ago. And so if you think about receiving a letter like that, what that would mean, the only better thing in the world is being the one who gets to write it. Because then you look at that list of friends and you're like, these aren't random people. Each of these people is in my life for a reason, and these are my people. And I'll tell you what, it transformed my heart, and it transformed these other people's hearts, because really, and then you put it in a handwritten letter, and I'm telling you, it's next level. And here's why. Because if let's say you wrote the letter, it's the opposite now. You wrote me the high school letter, and you've said the same kind of meaningful stuff. But when I go to my mailbox, I pull it out of the box before I've even read all the great stuff you had to say. I'm going to hold that in my hands, and right away, and I didn't understand this until it happened 600 times, I'm going to understand the effort it took for you to do this. You had to sit down, like, where are the envelopes, and do I have paper, or am I going to use a card? But you had to make that decision. Then you had to take the time to write it down, whether it was 3 sentences or 17 pages. It matters not. You can get this done in 1 sentence and be fine. But then you showed me your vulnerability, because there's your handwriting. Then you had to get it in the envelope and seal it. Then who has anyone's address anymore? You had to find that. Wait, where are the stamps? You had to go buy that because you didn't have it. Then you got to drive across Lubbock, Texas. Where even is the post office or the blue mailboxes? And then you got to put them in. And then I'm going to hold that in my hand, something that you held in your hand, that you meant just for me, that has no monetary value. And I'm going to think, oh my God, I matter this much to another human being. Boom, 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 boom. You will blow the world up. I will tell you this because all of a sudden now I'm the expert on it because of my experience.
I can't imagine how that felt to so many people. And just to think about how many people's lives you impacted. I mean, 600 people is a ton.
Right.
I'm lucky to impact one person every single day in my interactions, but 600 to have that on my resume, but really it's more like the resume of my heart,
Right.
Because that makes my heart so full knowing that you impacted all of those people, and who knows what they were going through because you only know them, so surface level. I think about when I get a coworker will stick a sticky note on my computer screen, and I always think that means so much because it took them effort to do that and to think of me in that way. And I think we just take things like that for granted. I remember writing my mom notes from Girl Scout camp telling her how awful and hot and disgusting it was. And I do remember how much I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed holding paper, really cute stationery, getting a really great pen, and then writing all of those things down. And when I stopped receiving letters like that or invitations or anything, it just kind of crushed me. More than a lost art, it definitely reminded me of how intentional we're not being with each other.
Right. And I think it's important not to villainize like electronic communication because it's so necessary. This is just a way to take it to the next level. It's like you said about the sticky note. That's the perfect example. One, you don't need to do it 600 times. I think God just gave me a great story to tell so I have this experience and tell other people about it. And it doesn't have to be a 2-page letter. It can be a sticky note. It can be the smallest card that Target has on offer. And it can be 2 sentences because you don't have to be a writer to do this. All you have to be is a human with a heart and have sincerity. That's all it takes to get this done. And you don't really have to mail it. I think that's next level because there's a surprise element there. But you can deliver it to their inbox. You can put it on their door. You can stick it in their car. It is the same impact. It is just off the chain. The number one response I got from these letters was this: I will save your letter in a special place for the rest of my life. And I'm not the only one with this tool. Every single one of us has this tool. Like I said, it seems almost too simple.
Yeah, it's the easiest thing. And I love that you said not to villainize electronic communication because it also does mean a lot to me when someone randomly sends me a text and says, I've been thinking about you. We're always looking for ways to make each other feel more special or to let someone know that we're thinking about them or that they may be a little more removed from our lives than they previously were. But that doesn't mean that we don't still want to know them and love them. And so I love that you are finding a way to remind people of that, regardless of how close they are to you.
Right. And one thing I do now, because I still honor the Dana and Parker story every day. One, because, clearly my life pivoted on that. Two, that 18-month version of myself was the best version of myself. If I could be anybody I want to be, I'd want to be the girl writing the letters because that was absolutely the best version of me. And three, this practice that I'm going to tell you about makes me realize that every day I can do one thing that's positive. So I keep a notebook by my desk and it's got different categories. And it's like, thank you, sympathy, concern, support, congrats, and otherwise. And so when I'm on social media or when I'm talking to friends and somebody tells me so and such, I'm at the age now where everybody's parents are starting to pass away, sadly, but so and such's mom died, or so and such won an award at work, or so and such reached their 15th episode on their podcast. I write their name down and what I heard or what I saw on Facebook. And then every morning I get up and the first thing I do is I write somebody, and it's not a long note. I write a short note, like 4 or 5 sentences, and say, hey, congratulations on your 15th podcast. I'm so proud of you. And I do it 5 days a week. And I will tell you still, after all I have learned, after my heart has been so full, almost every morning I sit down, I'm like, oh, I got to write another letter because that's human. And I think people should expect that if they want to get involved in this. Every single day, it just reminds me of who I could be, who I can be, who God maybe wanted me to be.
When you said those 18 months was the best version of you, I could not imagine. I know whenever I tell someone a compliment, if I compliment someone's hair or their outfit or their presentation, it makes me feel so much better because I brought a smile to someone's face. And
Right.
when someone does that for me, they have no idea that I'm having a mini meltdown in my head and thinking that I'm incompetent or, incapable of doing what I just did. So I can't imagine how great you felt in 18 months and to carry that with you and continue that practice, even though you're not as jazzed about it right now, but it's still something that you kind of force yourself to do. And I can't imagine the mind shift that puts you in for your entire day.
Right. And I still get incredible responses from people who are like, oh my gosh. And it's hilarious because I have a guy just last week who my husband used to work with. He's like, hey, we just moved to the hill country. I just want to send you my address just in case. Like people are looking for it. They're like, wait, she might write me. She's nutso. She might send me a letter. And it's hilarious. And he's like, I think Tech's going to make a run in the suite, in the basketball. I was like, yeah, they are. And what's hilarious, they want me to have their address. But you brought up a really important point, though. The assumption is if you reach out to me and tell me the things you see in me that are good or something good about me or some kind of support of me, that I would be the one, the recipient, come away from the experience the most changed, the most, that would be the most fulfilled. But really the plot twist is the letter writer is the one who is most fulfilled and changed. I guarantee you, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about writing somebody a note, it will change your life more than anyone else's. Because the person who walked away from this entire story, the most changed, the person who's the most filled up to the top is me. It's me.
Oh, I love that so much. But it's true, it just makes us feel good to be intentional with people. I know it makes me feel absolutely wonderful when I can tell for myself that it's not for a fake reason. It's not just to check off something on my to-do list. It's truly because I have intention with that person. And yeah, to do it so many times, I'm sure was just life altering.
Oh yeah, it was mind blowing, and I did struggle a little bit. Well, I struggled a lot. I knew that I wanted to share the story. I knew I wanted. About halfway through, I was like, oh, I'm probably going to write a book about this. But I really struggled, one, with the Dana and Parker component, because now Dana is my best friend. Now I talk to Dana every day on the phone, and Dana and I still write each other. But Dana is all up in my life. She's the best friend anyone could ever have. So I'm really going to write a story. I'm really going to write a book and sell it. Luckily, I let them read the first manuscript, and they were like, let's go. And she went on the whole book tour with me, and we were on Kelly Clarkson together and all those things. And I'm sitting there on Kelly Clarkson. Behind me is a picture of Parker, and me and Dana are sitting there. And Dana's telling Kelly Clarkson how at the beginning, her and her girls used to wait for the letter to come. And I had this moment where I was hoping I didn't have my mouth open on national television, where I was like, wait a second. This really happened. God, look what happened. Like it hit me like a thunderbolt. I had a hard time even with the letters because I felt like a little bit of writing the book was about, look at me, how great I am, because I wrote all these letters. But I really felt the value of the story was more important. I tried in the book, one, not to amp myself up, and two, I wanted the book to meet everyone where they were. So just as not everybody I wrote to believed in God, the book has a lot of spiritual components to it. I didn't want anyone to feel unwelcome because that God can take care of all that. God don't need me to take care of all that. I wanted the book to be welcome to anyone who read it, just like the letters between all the individuals and me were up to these relationships, and it didn't have anything to do with whether we were Christians or Buddhists or Republicans or Democrats or how we felt about gender roles or anything about that.
No, I love that you made the book align with the purpose of those letters. That makes perfect sense. And to name it Dear Dana, because again, I think when we come up with book titles, podcast titles, and things like that, I'm like, what's gonna resonate the most, or what's gonna grab people's attention? But this book was truly you staying authentic to your mission of truly just reaching out to her, and the fact that it touched her life in so many ways. When I read about the story, I thought, that's the perfect title. There's no way it could be anything else.
Well, I had a couple people say it should be two separate stories. Like there should be Dear Dana, and then there should be the Facebook story. I was like, the thing that without Dana and Parker, there never would have been 580 letters. There'd never been all the prayers and all that things. And it turns out that Parker just loved Jesus. And I really think that that's what this story is about. This kid loved Jesus, and then all the rest of it happened.
Oh, you've inspired me to do so many things after I get off this podcast, but also first thing when I wake up in the morning. And so you mentioned a little bit that you take this practice and you continue to do it every single day. When you're doing keynotes or speaking publicly about your experience with all of that, do you feel like you're really touching a place in people's heart that they feel like they're missing? Do you ever get negative pushback on, I don't have time for this? Or what's a different way where I can allow myself time to reach out to people?
I've gotten very little negative feedback directly to me because, and I'm sure there's people in the background who don't like the idea because most everyone is super inspired. And I've been so shocked at how many things I've done because at first I saw it as an inspirational story, which it is, but now I talk to business groups because it really is so applicable anywhere you go. I did a real estate group once and I was like, why am I even here? Like, what is this about? And I was like, wait a second, this works anywhere where there's humans. Some of the feedback I get is I'm too busy, this makes me vulnerable, especially in the business world. This really puts me out there. And I tell people all the time, I sat down with all those same thoughts with almost every letter I wrote. Like in my journal, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe I just wrote my third grade teacher. Oh my God, I believe I wrote my mom's best friend from Norway. Like that's ridiculous. But I will tell you that every single one of those letters, I mean, I don't think I ever got it wrong, not because I'm a good person or I'm a good writer. It's just the intention, the deliberateness, and the non intrusiveness, because you're not asking anybody for anything when you send them a note or a letter. I did this women's conference, and this woman had like 1,500 people working for her. And she started with one note a week, just like 2 lines to somebody who worked for her. And she said after 6 months, and then she was doing 2 notes a week, she walked around like the cubicles, and these people had these on display like they were badges of honor, and she just could not believe how it moved the needle, of employee engagement. I think it's just getting over that hump of allowing yourself to be vulnerable and be sincere and trust your gut, because we all have this within us.
And like you said, it's not that you have to know everything about them. It's just one thing that you notice that makes you a human, especially as a supervisor or as a boss. We want to feel connected to them in a certain way where we're not just a number. And I
Right.
think when it comes from someone who might be, an authority figure, that means so much to us as employees. And so I would imagine that group, it resonates with them tenfold.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It could be one sentence. As long as it's sincere and it's in your handwriting, that's all it really takes. It's specific, especially for a work context. I saw you knocked it out of the park at the meeting, or you reached your goal, or I read your email you sent to the team. It's so powerful. And I can't emphasize that enough. Anyone who's listening, we all have this tool. Every single one of us has this tool in our human toolkit. It's just a matter of utilizing. It's not something you need to do, 100 times a year, even. It can be used sparingly, but it's so powerful. And most times when I'm talking about it, somebody has somebody in their head that they're thinking about, and I would just encourage people just to sit down and do it tonight.
Absolutely. Do you feel like there's any value in even just sitting down and writing that letter or that note to someone? And I would encourage them to send it, but do you feel like there's value even in us just putting our thoughts down on paper for a specific person?
Oh, absolutely. And then what I think might happen if you do that, eventually you're just going to think about, because you know how we think about the words we write, and there's a bunch of science behind the power of handwriting, like you writing something down with your hand as opposed to typing it. Sometimes that's more effective than the computer. But there's something about that. I really think you're gonna play it in your head so many times, and eventually you're gonna end up mailing it. But just because you're going to be like, I have to let them know. I have to let them know what I said, or you rewrite it in the context of a note or a letter, because that's the beautiful thing. You're never going to forget what you said. You're going to drop it in the mailbox. And the other great thing about this whole process is, you're not going to know when they received it. You're not going to get a thing that says read at this time. So it takes the pressure off of you thinking I'm not good enough because I did get a response, and them thinking they have to respond. And I found out over and over again that, I had 75% of the people, I'm a numbers girl, respond to the letters in some way. What I'm always reminded of is those 25% of the people who didn't respond to me, that doesn't mean that it didn't mean anything to them. It just means they didn't respond. So we don't have to have a response to know we made a difference. And I think we know that, but the way we communicate, it messes with our heads and our hearts and our confidence and our, everything inside of us. It messes with us.
If every single person who listens to this episode wrote each other a letter, can you imagine the correspondence and the volume that would be happening all over the world?
When I do the keynote, one version of it is we take 15 minutes out in the middle and we all write a note to someone, like a little letter, a little mini letter. And I think about that stuff in the world and it blows my mind. And I do a lot of these podcasts, and let's say 10% of the people write something afterwards. I would hope the number's higher, but you're right. We could literally change the world with this thing, but we wouldn't know it.
I would love to see a heat map of
Oh,
the impact, right? That would be insane. It would be beautiful.
one of the things I did, I had a little prayer team going, and I made a map. I did this newsletter, and I made a map with everyone on the team, like so she could physically see where everybody was. But it made me think of a weather map and like the impact. And when I looked at it, I was like, this is the impact these strangers who don't know her are having on her life without her knowing. But that's the same concept of what you just said.
Yes. Like have a pin of every person that you've sent a letter to. And then if they were inspired by you and they dropped a pin on where they sent letters to, I think we would be absolutely shocked to see the reach that it would have. And it's
Right.
positive.
That's the thing about, real change. You don't see it. I mean, a lot of those dots would be in the panhandle for me. I wrote a lot of letters to people in the panhandle. It would be filled up there. And that just, I mean, again, if you really start thinking about it, it's just so humbling. To me, it will always be all God. And I was just, you know, I'm just the girl who gets to tell the story.
I'm sure there will be a lot of people listening who maybe have received your letters. Hopefully, that
Yeah.
would be a full circle moment. And I would love that for them and for you. Well, Amy, I just want to thank you so much for spreading this message of love, connection, and doing it in an unconventional way, even though it's not unconventional. I just really appreciate your perspective and bringing that to the podcast and to our listeners. And I know you've inspired so many people just by coming on and telling us about the story of Dana and how you've reached out to so many people and touched their lives.
Well, I thank you very much. And I think that the thing we have in common, which is really interesting, is that, the handwritten letters going out into nowhere and you not knowing what happened, you speaking into your microphone, inspiring people, sharing stories with them, going out into nowhere. We share that. So I think we have to encourage each other, one to follow through on those small voices. We talked about this before, those small voices we hear, to encourage one another to do that, not to follow the same path, but to go through with our gut instinct, and then never stop. Let's go. Because we never know when we're changing the whole planet.
Thank you for saying that because I sit here and I think I need to do something as profound as writing 600 handwritten letters, but the fact that you said the podcast is kind of my version of that, I just thank you for saying that because I do think that when we open up, when we're vulnerable and we talk about our experiences, there's so much connection in that. And I think that's what this podcast, all the guests on the podcast, and what you're doing by writing those letters is allowing us to do and allowing people to see us for who we really are.
I'm just telling you, we got to push each other forward. We got to prop each other up and push each other forward. And we got to promise each other we're going to keep going.
Absolutely. Well, Amy, I always wrap up the podcast by asking two important questions. So, I read your website and I know you have a lot of interesting facts about yourself, but I want you to try to pick one thing that most people may not know about you.
I like to eat with a salad fork and not a dinner fork. I don't know why the long fork. My family's always trying to put one by my plate, and I'm like, get that out of here. I will not take your long fork. I will not be a part of of that kind of bad behavior. So that's just a fun fact.
Listen, we don't need two forks. I don't care if it's formal or not. You don't want to have to do more dishes. It makes no sense to me.
Right, and the long fork, the food's too far away. I mean, I need to get in there, guys. I didn't get to be this skinny without filling up. So.
You're making me question all my life decisions now because I'm sitting here thinking about the two size forks I have in my drawer, and I always reach for the long fork.
But that's you, and that's what I was talking about. We have to support each other on our different paths. So I will send you all my long forks, and you can send me all your short forks, and then the equilibrium will be reestablished.
What a beautiful connection to
Yeah,
the
that's right.
overall theme. I
Right.
love that. Okay, well, my second question is who are three women that you look up to or who inspire you?
Oh, that's really hard because we all have so many. And I'm going to start with Condoleezza Rice, who was the Secretary of State, and not only has she battled, come over so many hurdles to get where she was, is I feel like she doesn't take herself too seriously. She's so accomplished, she's so well spoken, but she doesn't seem at all like so full of herself. And the other thing is, they asked her what her dream job would be. I mean, she's basically been everything. She wanted to be the NFL commissioner, and she served on the college football playoff committee. I mean, what a diverse, like, out there, like, and to be taken that seriously by the rest of those sports people. I just love her, and I would love to talk to her and hear her perspective on everything, because I think there's so much grit and determination. And then she just has the freedom to be herself completely, which is just absolutely phenomenal, you
I
know?
did not know that about her. And yeah, you have to have strong will and tough skin to work in the sports world.
Right. Right. And I did my time there too. And as a woman, it's a, interesting thing, but being taken seriously, because the rest of the people on that committee were coaches and, athletic directors. And so there's that. And then my second one would be Eleanor Roosevelt. And what I love about Eleanor Roosevelt is she wasn't the pretty hot girl of the 1940s, and so her to gain traction, the traction she did in that time period, she was so unconventional. She was so herself before it was cool to be yourself, and she changed people's lives by giving opportunity to groups that didn't have opportunities. And she confidently, is in this not functional marriage with the president of the United States, but they changed the world together because they were the right two people combined. But I don't know if she sat up every morning and thought, oh my God, I have these huge teeth and I can't face the entire world and they're all going to make fun of me. And I'm being cheated on by my husband and I'm just this woman who's, has this, my father committed suicide and all these marks against her, but she just marched forward. She marched forward to change the world and she never stopped and she never let anybody tell her, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You're just a woman. You can't do that. You're not pretty. You can't do that, and what she did was just did it all. So I love her. She's the best. And my third one is Dana Rivera, my friend, because that girl is so courageous. If you ever met her, she needs to be a Disney ride. It's like the Dana Rivera experience. She's got this huge personality, and every room she goes in, she looks to light it up, looks for the person who doesn't have anybody to talk to. And I didn't know about this in the letters. I didn't know. I knew she had a big personality from camp, but I didn't know how this was going to be. She advocates for people. She is the life of the party. If she has Mardi Gras breeds and you don't have them, she'll give you hers. She's not a perfect person by any means, but she is this courageous, strong person who, despite her horrible experience, lights up rooms and she courageously shows up like she did on the Kelly Clarkson show and shares her story. So I absolutely look up to her and she inspires me. She's my hero, the way she lives her life despite what happened to her. And if Dana Rivera could do anything she wanted to do in the world, we've been on like cruises together, we travel together a lot. She would have an unlimited amount of money to tip everyone she wanted to tip. Like she wants to tip everyone. Like always, she's like, do you have any cash? Because she always wants to tip somebody like a bunch of money. That's always, and it's just so, and it's not even about the money. It's that people see seen by her. It's almost like the letters in the form of that's just who she is. I mean, and I think that's why God put us together, because we are like-minded. And actually, I'm giving the speech this weekend in Shreveport, and she's going to be at the speech for the first time. So it's very exciting.
I want you guys to adopt me into your friend group. Is that possible?
Absolutely. Well, I will tell you I'm not saying I need to come back on your podcast, but we could come on together at some point. So
I think that would be so much fun. I would love to meet her. She sounds like my kind of gal. I love people who want to make other people feel good because that's my MO. And so it's very fitting that she is your third. But again, it's very hard, if not dang near impossible, to pick 3 women out of your entire life.
No, and I have so many more. But yeah, those are the first 3 that came to mind. So
of course. Well, Amy, thank you again so much. I have learned so much from you, and I know you've taught everyone else just one small way that we can make a difference in so many people's lives. And so I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where to follow you, where to hear from you, or to learn more about your books.
All right. Yeah, I'm amydaughters.com is my website. You can find out about both books, about the speaking, about all my social media. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can send me an email. I would love to hear from people. But the best part, guys, is my mailing address is on there. So send me a letter and I will 100% write you back.
Yes, if you send Amy a letter, you need to comment and let us know because I would love to see this connection start to happen. And if it's because of this podcast, I would be over the moon.
Right. Amen, sister.
All right. Well, if you have enjoyed today's episode and you want to hear from more amazing and awe-inspiring women from the Texas Panhandle and beyond, then make sure that you like, subscribe, leave a review. And until next time, stay strong, stay connected, and keep growing.